Planning Commission. It's a regular meeting on Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. That's me knocking the hammer. Okay, the first thing we need to do is adopt the agenda. Can I have somebody move to adopt our agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Can I have
I'll
a second?
Excuse me.
All right, can we take a vote to adopt the agenda of tonight's meeting? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And everyone not in favor, say no. So the agenda is adopted. And has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
The work session on
Yes.
June 2nd, 2020?
Yes.
Is there anything anybody needs to add to those minutes?
No.
Or any comments? All right, can I have somebody move to approve the minutes of the work session held June 2nd, 2020?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the work session held June 22nd.
Okay, it was actually held June 2nd.
June 2nd, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Can I have somebody second that?
I'll second it.
Okay, can we take a vote to approve the minutes of the work session held June 2nd, 2020?
Aye.
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 All right, the motion carries. No, anybody say no? Motion carries. Oh, I forgot the Pledge of Allegiance, but since we don't have a flag, I think it's okay for us to skip the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, we don't have one nearby here. Should have come up with one.
That's what we did last time.
Okay, okay. Now we're going to have a public hearing on the rezoning request by Riverbend Development on behalf of Rosser Avenue Development LLC to rezone a property at 0 Tiffany Drive, Waynesboro, Virginia, city tax map number 413112, currently zoned RS12, single family residential, and HB highway business, to RG5 general residential and RMF multifamily residential. So just be patient with me because I haven't done a public hearing in a long time. Okay, so I would like to now invite staff or other commissioners to present any reports you have on the topic.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Everyone see that all right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. And I'll also be pulling up in just a second here the rezoning plan. So hopefully you had a chance to look at your packet. It was fairly substantial, the staff report and the attachments as well. This proposal is for a rezoning of the property at 0 Tiffany Drive in the city. It's located just behind the Walmart Supercenter, next to Grand Home Furnishings and Martin's, in between Dewitt and Rosser Avenue. Just give you an idea, kind of that blank spot there where there's not a lot of roads. That's where your where the subject property is located in the city. Just to say a few words about the nature of the request. I know we're all kind of fresh from the Quisenberry discussion. And there's two things that I told you during the Quisenberry discussion that are going to be the exact opposite for this discussion. So Quisenberry was a by right subdivision, and that meant that we were primarily concerned with details of the development and whether it met the standards of our ordinance. But what I told you several times is that we were not discussing whether or not they could build those houses, that they already had the right to build those houses. In this case, it's exactly the opposite. They do not have a subdivision request before us today. This is just a rezoning. And that means that we don't have to talk about a lot of little details about the development, like exactly, will they have sidewalks? Will they have street trees? All those things will be covered by our subdivision ordinance whenever they actually come with a subdivision application. What we are talking about is whether or not they can have the entitlement to build what they would like to build. So this is where that actual entitlement is being granted. This is where we're changing what it is that they own the right to build. In this case, the current zoning is split on the property. So the western part, or really the central part of the property, is zoned RS12, or single family residential 12. You should already be pretty familiar with that zone from both the Claybrook preliminary plat amendment and the Quisenberry preliminary plat that came before us recently. RS12s allows single family homes only at a maximum density of 3.5 units per acre. And I mentioned in the staff report that with slopes and floodplain and all kinds of other considerations, you're probably looking at realistically no more than 150 houses that they could build with the existing zoning on this property. But there's also a large section of the property, both along Dewitt and then also behind Martin's on the eastern side, that are zoned highway business. This is a zone that allows all commercial uses and even some uses that some people might categorize as light industrial. It's the zone that most of exit 94 is under. All the big box stores and a lot of West Main Street is highway business as well. It allows everything from self-storage units to big box stores to towing lots, service stations, all kinds of businesses. There is a ton of room. This is a very large property, as you know, both from the residential side and the commercial side here. It's a large piece of land. And so there's room for 100,000 square feet or more of commercial development here. So this is what their current entitlement is. If we don't change anything about their zoning, they are currently allowed to build this many houses and this much commercial. I mentioned in the staff report that it's, as far as what's realistic, it's probably unlikely that they would build that much commercial just because the commercial market, as we talk about a lot, is weaker and because it doesn't have as much visibility for main corridors. But there are some types of commercial uses that would probably be viable here under the status quo. I mentioned self-storage. We're getting a lot of demand for that right now, and certain other kinds of uses that don't require a lot of visibility directly from the corridor. The applicant has proposed to change the zoning of the property. It will still be split zoned, but now the two zones will be first RG5 general residential. This is the same zone that's used across Basic City, Wayne Hills, a lot of Jefferson Park, a lot of the core neighborhoods of the city, as well as Evershire. This will allow them, and their proposal is to build single family attached homes. A lot of people call these duplexes. Our ordinance differentiates between duplexes and single family homes. A duplex for our ordinance is a 2-unit structure on one lot. So that's a nice arrangement if you're renting out the units. In this case, single family attached means that each unit is on its own separate lot. Oftentimes they're called the villa style houses. An example of homes that look like this could be in the Pratt's Run neighborhood or the Brandon, not the Brandon townhomes, not the Brandon Lad apartments, but the townhomes. So these are 2-unit structures, with each unit on a separate lot. The other section directly behind Martin's, the section that's currently zoned for highway business, they're proposing to rezone for residential multifamily, RMF, about 9 acres of that. This would allow them to construct apartment buildings at a density of up to 20 units per acre. This is the same zoning that we have for several different apartment complexes. It would allow them to build something comparable to like the Windy Grove apartments. They're also proffering, there are different ways that they could configure the property to squeeze in as many units as possible. But they're proffering that they'll put a maximum number of units, possible number of units that could be developed in this area at 600. So that's still a lot of units, obviously, and wouldn't get built for a long time at the rate that we tend to sell units in Waynesboro. But they're proffering that across the entire property, 600 would be the total maximum. And anything that's proffered, anything that's present in that proffered letter becomes part of the zoning. So if they offer those things in an attachment and then we pass it and it's signed, that becomes part of the agreement. It's not just something that they're saying. Here's where the subject property is located. You can see where Walmart is, Martin's and Grant Home Furnishings. Here's Dewitt and Rosser Avenue. Tiffany Drive is the main access point currently. So the address is 0 Tiffany Drive. But it encompasses a large piece of property with a portion of Pratt's Run, the creek running through it. They've presented a site plan and they've actually proffered the general layout. A lot of times we get site plans along with rezoning, and I'll clarify for you that they're conceptual only. And that means that the applicant is just showing us one possible thing that could be developed under the new zoning. And oftentimes we'll require that to show us how you're going to make this zoning work. We don't want to rezone to something that is going to be useless. But in this case, they're actually proffering the site plan. And this is what happens with a lot of large rezonings. They're presenting us, before you approve the entitlement, you want to know roughly what it's going to look like. And so they've proffered that. I'm going to pull up that and try to share with you now the site plan that they presented, and it should be in your packet. Oh, no, only sharing the one screen. Just a second. All right, the site plan up now. Down here, what would be the east side, you see Tiffany Drive coming in, and they're proposing an extension of Tiffany Drive all the way up here to near Pratt's Run. And then a road connection that would run from Tiffany Drive all the way out to Dewitt and would connect where the current Caribbean car wash is. Then they're proposing an internal network of streets with a couple of cul-de-sacs, but mostly built around that main road right there. In red here is something that we'll talk about in a few minutes, right of way that they're dedicating. This area over here is about 10 acres that they're proposing to dedicate to the city for use in a future public park. This is a small pocket park that will be privately owned by the homeowners association that they're proposing. And this is an interparcel connection to a neighboring area. This down here, this 9 acres is where the residential multifamily would be. Then the rest of this would be RG5 zoned. Pull back up our presentation, see if I can get that to work. And here's a little screen grab of the location off of Google Earth that kind of shows you where their 2 entrances will be, here at this existing curb cut at the Caribbean Car Wash, and then here at Tiffany Drive. The biggest issue with the rezoning of this size is traffic. They had to complete a traffic study, which has been revised over the past couple of years several times. The TIA was completed by Ramey Kemp, and I believe that we'll have, the applicant has brought a representative from that engineering firm here to discuss any questions that you may have with the traffic study. It was the last attachment on the staff report, and obviously quite long. The first part of the traffic study is hopefully what you took a look at, and that's where you have a lot of summary stuff. Towards the end there's all kinds of timings and diagrams and stuff like that. There are a number of impacts that they discern that this development would potentially have, and it's based off of the 600 unit maximum build out they're proffering, which is part of why they would proffer a maximum build out like that. So it gives you some kind of number to work with in the traffic study. They're proposing, first of all, that they're going to lengthen the queue at Tiffany Drive. Currently, we have 150 feet of storage in the left turn lane at Tiffany Drive onto Rosser Avenue. We currently have about 160 feet of usage of that. Cars already back towards the Walmart. But their development, according to the TIA, will produce a queue length of about 210 feet. And so as part of the proffer, the applicant will reconfigure those lanes in order to provide sufficient storage for their development. The second item is they're constructing a new road to Dewitt Boulevard, and they'll connect at the existing median curb cut. This new road and our requirement is something that the city staff have pushed for and required of anyone who wanted to develop this property. And thus far, it's been the main sort of fiscal barrier to developing it. What they're doing is they've acquired some property from a neighboring property owner to allow them to access an existing curb cut that was built when Dewitt Boulevard was constructed, and an existing left turn lane, which is a significant savings there and allows them to tie into that intersection. The TIA concluded that they would just avoid warranting a signal at that location, which is not a bad thing to city staff because that location is already too close to the signal that's located at Lowe's, according to VDOT, for us to put a signal there. And in general, we don't like to multiply signals as much as possible. However, there will be a significant amount of traffic coming out at that intersection. And for that reason, they'll have to construct a wide enough entrance with the necessary turn lanes. We also are put into the staff report a clarification that the city is going to reserve the right to alter the geometry of that intersection in the future if it becomes a safety concern. If there's too much traffic coming out, but a signal isn't possible, then we may be able to restrict left turns out of the development at that area. But that, at least for the foreseeable future, we think that this intersection will function just fine. The TIA also, as part of the TIA, they concluded that they'll have to construct an interparcel connection to the adjacent commercial properties. And you could see that on the site plan that we discussed. That if that commercial property develops and there is no plan for that development at the moment, then that will hopefully allow for an alternative exit that will also help to decrease the total amount of traffic coming out there. The city also, not for traffic reasons, but for emergency access reasons, is requiring a secondary access to the apartment complex because that could be a significant number of units there. For emergency purposes, we always require 2 entrances into a neighborhood that large. You know, the largest area that we have on only 1 entrance is probably up near where Mike Gibson lives, where there's almost 100 units up there. But generally, we would try to avoid that situation now. And the secondary access that we require is not shown on the site plan currently, but it is in the proper, or it is in the staff report, I believe in the proffer letter. And so we've sent that comment along as well. And the exact location of that can be worked out at the subdivision phase. And part of why they're going to leave that vague for the moment is because it might make sense for them simply to do a bollarded emergency access to an adjacent property. But if one of the other adjacent properties, specifically property on Rosser Avenue, develops, then it might make sense for them to connect to that. And we would probably want to push for a connection there. Again, some of the stuff can be worked out during the subdivision phase, but the general layout they are proffering now. The big thing that's happening now is we're granting that entitlement for the 600 units, and so that's now is the time when we decide whether to give that much of a right to build. They've also proffered a right of way for our connector road that the city's planned, and I'll talk about that for just a second. This is a map of the Dewitt-Rosser connector, which was a big focus of the previous planner, Michael Barnes. You can see it connects the Rosser Avenue here to Dewitt Boulevard at Shepherd Court, where the Zeus movie theater is over here. It would be a great thing for the city to have, and that it would help to create a better connection from the south side of the city up to the west side of the city, and hopefully alleviate some traffic on the Dewitt and Rosser intersection. Unfortunately, it's also an extremely expensive road because it's dealing with a lot of wetland. It involves a stream crossing. It involves quite a bit of right-of-way acquisition, and it's just the construction of roads is expensive. The city has tried in 2 different cycles to get smart scale money for this, and in the most recent cycle, it didn't score well enough to even really justify submitting it again until traffic is significantly worse or there's a lot of accidents in that area. So for that reason, this project has largely been shelved. For that reason, I would say we should not plan on it existing. You know, that's part of why we didn't allow them to connect to this road as one of their entrance points, because we don't know that this road will actually happen. But we are trying to make it possible for this road to exist in the future if it does become warranted, especially if there is an increase in traffic enough to where that intersection where they're dumping on Dewitt becomes too congested. And then you can start to get a lot more points in the smart scale system, and maybe we would start to get money for this road. But as it is, they're just reserving right of way so that road could be provided in the future. I'm going to try to flip back over to the plan. As you can see in red here is the right of way that they're proffering, and then here is the remaining alignment of that road as it exists currently in our documents. We've been open to change, but that is there. So if it did ever get built, then the Tiffany Drive would connect into it and provide more interconnectivity. But we've pushed for this connection because we don't know that this will happen. So they're sort of providing some of the benefit of that road already by providing an alternative route around Dewitt-Rosser. It's circuitous enough, and this will probably be a narrower residential street, that it probably won't be a preferred alternative to driving down to the Dewitt-Rosser intersection. But if you're coming, for instance, from Pelham or on the west side of town, maybe you would take this cut around to get to Martin's. Or if there was an accident at the Dewitt-Rosser intersection, then it would provide some kind of alternative connectivity so that you don't get into an emergency access problem. As far as conformance with the comprehensive plan, this area is designated mixed use E. Mixed use E is for commercial, retail, and various residential housing types, parks, and open space. An extension of Tiffany Drive to connect to Rosser Avenue and Dewitt Boulevard is essential to the development of this area. This is all quoting from the land use guide. Through rezoning and the development review process, encourage developers to integrate 2 or more uses in this location to provide a transition between the commercial centers and the residential neighborhoods, meet a variety of area needs, i.e. higher density housing choices, and minimize vehicle trips between uses. And here it is shown on the comprehensive land use plan map. In this case, we've called the developer is proposing medium and high density residential, which meets what the comp plan is calling for in this area, and it supplements existing commercial. While this particular development will be all residential, we already have a very heavy commercial presence in that location. And so staff felt that building more residential would provide that mixed use situation and would help to make both of those uses more viable. and would also provide an appropriate transition to the lower density residential on the other side of Pratt's Run. So we'll have a heavy commercial area, a medium to heavy density residential area, and then a lighter residential area. They also are proffering 10 acres of land along Pratt's Run for potential park development. I don't have the full legend for the comp plan land use map up, but this green asterisk here is a symbol that's used to designate locations where the city would like to have parks in the future. And so they'll be providing land for that, though they will not be developing amenities at the park. They'll also provide a road connections. As you can see from the land use guide, the hope is to have better connectivity in this area between Rosser and Dewitt. While we are not getting the full Rosser-Dewitt connector road anytime soon, and there are a lot of different owners who will have to get on board with that, they are providing some kind of connectivity between Rosser and Dewitt through that Tiffany Drive road to their road to Dewitt. Because of this, staff are recommending approval of the development because it is consistent with the city's desired use on the land use map. We feel that this particular application does enough to meet all of the requirements in the city's comprehensive plan and achieves what we're trying to achieve in this area. And the proffers for land ensure that additional priorities can happen. We'll have land for parks and for connector roads in the future if needed. We also feel that they have, VDOT has approved their traffic impact analysis. So we feel they have sufficient mitigation of their traffic impacts. And we feel that they're providing neighborhood amenities in proximity to commercial that'll add value for both of those areas, that this will improve the value of the commercial property there and provide a good mixed use experience for residents as well. So for these reasons, staff recommend approval. Do you have questions for me? I'll pull up this.
Let me ask you a question, Luke.
Mm-hmm.
The zoning is contingent upon their proffer in general of their design of the development.
Correct.
For some reason, they go out of business or they don't choose to develop it, they sell it to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It's been rezoned, that other person can't come in at that point and say, hey, I got a by right subdivision. They're stuck with the proffers. Is that correct?
Correct. So the proffers become part of the zoning for the property. Yeah. So anyone that comes after them will have to do the same, follow the guidelines of the proffer letter.
Okay.
Hey, Luke, did anybody take into consideration fire services? You're adding 600 more houses. We've got one firehouse. How
Yes.
does that affect our ISO rating in Waynesboro?
I don't know about the ISO rating, but the fire marshal has reviewed it. His main concerns were with access, again, with ensuring secondary access points to every part of the neighborhood, and so they've met that. As far as additional load on the fire department, certainly, I mean, any kind of growth is going to be additional customers for them to service. But yeah, I don't know anything about our specific ISO rating. Same thing with the schools. We checked with them. They said that they have plenty of capacity. School system enrollment has been stable or declining lately. But yeah, any kind of growth is going to be more people.
Well, it's more people. I'm just thinking 600 houses in one firehouse.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a problem for us down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The traffic coming down Dewitt, as you had stated, that might want to use, there at the car wash entrance to this property, might want to take that left and come on down to Martin's or go out to Rosser. Is that going to invite too much traffic or traffic issues for the residential area? I mean, I see that as a great cut through that maybe more people will be wanting to take than to go down to the stoplight.
Mm-hmm. They've projected, some cut through traffic through here. Like I said, especially if there's an accident or if somebody's trying to get to one of these stores over here, potentially. It's circuitous enough. I guess that it'll be, if you're just trying to go from up here up to somewhere on Rosser, it'll still be faster to go down to the intersection and turn left. So I think you won't see, you know, a redirection of the traffic. But yeah, I think you would expect to see some cut through traffic, and that's something that will be present as soon as that road is built. And so hopefully that will be built into the, you know, capitalized into the cost of the homes that built there, that it's on a, you know, slightly busier road. Some of the effects of that can be mitigated by the width of the road and having parallel parking on the road. With attached single family homes, I would expect quite a bit of cars parked on the street, and that helps to slow down traffic somewhat. But yeah, I would think folks that are building on here would expect to see
And
more
that would,
traffic than if they're on a side street.
and that'd be a probably 25-mile zone.
Oh yeah, yeah, it'd be 25 miles. So,
Yeah, I would view the cutover the same as 13th Street coming from West Main over to Rosser is my view on the road through the subdivision. People are always gonna find shortcuts.
part of, you know, unfortunately, part of having an efficient road network is making good use of all your roads, so that, you know, you don't have to, people can get direct routes and not blow up main roads. But yeah, that's certainly a concern for folks. Like I said, hopefully, if it's constructed, if we phase the subdivision correctly, the one situation that I usually we try to avoid on staff is where you construct a road that looks like it's going to be a cul-de-sac, but that's planned to go all the way through. And that gets constructed as a cul-de-sac, and then the value of the homes gets capitalized as if it's a cul-de-sac, and then people are upset when the road gets extended through. So we'll certainly try to phase the subdivision to avoid that problem, so that homeowners understand what it is that they're joining, that they're purchasing.
Anyone else have questions?
Curious about snow removal. Once the road is built and they give it to the city, and then the city's got to maintain it. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah,
Yes.
it'll just, yeah, standard city street. And again, we don't have to discuss all the details of the road's profile and alignment. The assumptions that it'll be built to whatever our subdivision ordinance standards are whenever it does develop. But yes, it'll be a full city street. They are proffering that this Tiffany Drive, that they'll maintain the existing profile of Tiffany Drive, the existing width all the way through, just for consistency's sake, of what exists there now, even if our subdivision ordinance is narrower.
And they're going to build a road to nowhere to that red line that may or may not be built.
Well, this would all be a subdivision, or this would be a residential apartment complex. Yeah,
That's right.
it'd probably be built along with that. Yeah, this would certainly be phased.
What about the water runoff? How will that increase that stream, and what's
So as I mentioned with the Quisenberry development, under new development regulations, you have to process both your quantity and quality of stormwater on site. So that's not all of the stormwater from the site, but it's all of the additional stormwater runoff that would be created by developing the site. So yes, any additional stormwater runoff that they create, they'll have to handle. And they're showing here some stormwater management facilities. That's what SWM is. It does not mean swim facility. It's not a pool, but that's where the water will collect. And those are probably the engineering of those is probably pretty preliminary. They're just showing the locations where it would make sense to have those. When they actually construct roads and everything, they would do a full design, like what you saw with the Quisenberry.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Is the applicant here?
Yes, the applicant's just signed on. I have Ashley Davies, representative of Riverbend Development, to answer any questions you might have for them.
Do y'all have any questions for the applicant?
I'd like to know what the gist of the phases are. Not that we can hold them to it. I was just wondering what the plan is.
Well, can I officially invite her to the fake podium and have her give her name and address, please?
Great.
Yeah. Can you give your name and address?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name's Ashley Davies, and I am a resident of Charlottesville, so 1000 Locust Avenue in Charlottesville. I do have some very brief remarks about the development, if that's okay to share.
And I apologize, I did not communicate well enough to Ashley where this was streaming on YouTube, so I don't think she saw my presentation. So if she repeats anything, that's
I didn't, unfortunately. I am my very first Zoom public hearing, so thanks for making this available to bring us all together. But I didn't hear your previous conversation, so forgive me if I repeat anything, and feel free to stop and ask questions. So I am joined by Carl Holtgren, our traffic engineer, tonight as well. And like I said, I'm with Riverbend Development. We're a Charlottesville-based real estate development firm, started in 1995. And over the past 2 decades, we've developed more than 1 million square feet of commercial and mixed-use buildings, thousands of apartments, several hotels, and many thousands of residential lots and high-quality homes. So as a company, our approach to development is really trying to create a positive legacy through our work in the communities that we partner with. We've owned Carflow Farm since 2007. And during that time, our team has developed a layout that we think responds to the unique placement of the land, the rolling topography, and the environmental features such as Pratt's Run. As you know, the property's tucked behind and between numerous other properties. So it's kind of like a big puzzle piece, and makes it, I think, an ideal complement to the existing commercial development in the area, while also being a natural transition to the lower density residential areas on the other side of Pratt's Run. Our application calls for a maximum of 600 residential units, with the majority of those being platted lots and for sale homes. We think the proposal fulfills the need for transportation connections as identified in the comprehensive plan, and will allow for new high quality homes in this area. And I just want to thank Mr. Jude and all of the Waynesboro staff for working with us on this application and helping to evolve it and make it as harmonious as possible with the comprehensive plan and your long range vision. We also have lots of other communities in throughout Albemarle County that we've either developed or are under construction that are very similar to Carflow Farm. So we really look forward to getting started in the Waynesboro community. And now I can answer questions. So I believe your first question was about the phasing of the development.
Yeah, just in general.
Sure. So we will start the project up at the Lou DeWitt side, making that connection immediately, and bringing the road that goes through to Tiffany Drive, primarily for the purposes of the transportation network that we've studied. But so in terms of actually platting the lots, we would work back from Lou DeWitt, and I'd say we would probably do about 40 lots at a time. We haven't talked too specifically about the phasing. Some of that will obviously be market driven, but there are definitely, like, you would have that pod up in the connector road area to Lou DeWitt. And then there are some obvious blocks when you get into the center of the development. But I would see the multifamily section of the rezoning probably being the last thing to be built. I say that, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think the great thing about that multifamily zoning too is that it allows for all the residential housing types. So, if everything's going great in the neighborhood with the platted lots and maybe apartments aren't as popular, then you could always do platted lots down there as well, even with that multifamily zoning.
Thank you.
I've got a question about the stormwater management, and the only reason I bring it up is because it was a point of heavy discussion with the Quisenberry and the Carsbrook, not Carsbrook. She said Albemarle's got me thinking 29 North, Claybrook. Where in the storm flow management system does Carflow Farms fall? What comes into it and where does its storm water go out to?
I can answer that probably better. It's
Okay.
mostly, it's coming from west of Dewitt up towards like where the new Catholic Church is, and then it flows through Pratt's Run, through the country club area, and then enters the South River there.
Oh,
Is that what
okay.
is that what you're asking? Where it is in the watershed?
Yeah, where does the watershed? Because, you know, at Claybrook, the residents were concerned about the stormwater runoff coming into Claybrook, even though Claybrook dumps into somebody else. So I just thought I'd ask the question before somebody else asked the question.
Yes, here's Pratt's Run here, crosses underneath Rosser Avenue and flows through the country club area where it's channelized then into the South River here near the country club.
All right.
Yeah, but as I mentioned, they won't be able to generate any additional runoff into that system. They'll have to account for their quantity.
Quantity and quality. And I think if you look at our concept plan, we are really trying to stay off any of the areas where you have the steeper slopes that lead down into the waterways, and keeping the development away from Pratt's Run for the most part, and preserving those more environmentally sensitive areas as open space and potential parkland. So keeping that natural system intact.
Now, the space that's between the proposed might be built, could be built, wish we would be built road and the smaller stormwater facility, is that green space or is that projected city park? I can't read the little writing on it on my screen, so I can't tell what it's denoted as.
So the darker green is open space for the development. So the area that's to the left of the platted right-of-way area on the right-hand side would be dedicated to the city for a potential future park.
Okay.
Let me ask a question. To the west of the Walmart shopping center or super center, there is a small strip of land, I'm going to guess 50 feet wide or so. Any plans for that?
No.
Or was that something you just had to buy?
That was just part of the land. And I assume that maybe initially that was reserved as a potential connection, or if you wanted to maybe build a road out that way. And since we've had the property for so long, we looked at all potential connections up to Dewitt. It might looks like a utility.
Actually,
it doesn't actually connect to the road, the right of way.
Right.
Well,
it doesn't at this time, but
there is on your map shown, Luke, if you go down a little bit, and there is a entrance that goes to nowhere right across from Lowe's. And that's why I asked that question.
Yes, Bryant Drive, yes. Let me pull that up on the city GIS.
I think you've got it.
Just a second.
Yeah, you have it.
Yeah, I was just going to pull it up on city GIS. We can see the parcel there.
I believe, Stephen, there's a house. You're talking about that little gravel road behind DuPont and the New Mexican restaurant, right?
Yes, but I don't think anybody particularly uses it.
I think it's a house down there on the left.
Okay.
it's just a driveway.
Yeah. Because I've seen a car and a truck go down there, so I'm assuming somebody's living in it.
Well,
Yeah,
I think there's also
access to this parcel right here. Dewitt Place LLC.
Okay.
So yeah, to answer your question, that is just part of the parcel that we own, but we're just leaving it designated as open space because.
Okay, well,
best-
I can see it as an as a right of way for utilities,
Mhm.
but it is also temptingly close to a entrance that's there. Maybe something in the future.
Perhaps.
Do we have any more questions for Ashley or about anything before we open the public hearing?
No.
Okay, then I think we're good. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna open the public hearing for,
I'll,
oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Open the public hearing.
Okay. I'm gonna, hold on, let me find the right piece of paper here. I'm gonna open the public hearing on a rezoning request by Riverbend Development on behalf of Rosser Avenue Development LLC to rezone a property at 0 Tiffany Drive, Waynesboro, Virginia, city tax map number 413112, currently zoned RS12, single family residential, and HB highway business to RG5 general residential and RMF multifamily residential.
I'll go ahead and start off by saying that if you would like, if you're watching currently on the Government Access Channel or on YouTube and you would like to speak, what you're going to want to do is call in right now. And I'm going to share my screen here and put up for you the number that you can call into. And then that will allow you to join the meeting. So dial one of these numbers. I think the number that I sent out was this 301-715-8592 number. That's
Luke, is it
301.
possible to zoom in on that? It's
Yeah,
pretty
let
small
me-
on the screen.
Let me go ahead and just copy it over to my document that I've got here.
There we go.
Excellent.
There we go.
Much better.
On a big screen here, and you'll have to enter a meeting ID that I'm going to copy over as well. So again, if you call in and then enter in this meeting ID, which is 858-6902-6596. I provided this information also in the letters of notice to neighboring property owners, so hopefully that's available for them as well. And then when it's your turn to speak, we'll admit you to the public hearing. I have a couple of written comments, which I projected up here, and I'll read into the record for the citizens who wanted to make public comment. The first one is from Mr. Hugh Stittler. This is a comment with regards to the rezoning request by Riverbend Development on behalf of Rosser Avenue Development LLC to rezone a property at 0 Tiffany Drive, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map, etc. As a resident of Waynesboro, I'm opposed to this rezoning request for the following reasons. First, that the proposed rezoning area of Waynesboro is already heavily congested with traffic. Rezoning this tract to multifamily residential will add many more cars to the situation without additional road or intersection work. The property values of the current single-family neighborhoods will drop if multifamily housing is built adjacent to these neighborhoods, and increasing the impervious surface for multifamily parking lots will increase the stormwater runoff. The rezoning is not good for Waynesboro or its residents. Please reject this request and leave the zoning as is. And then a second comment from Mr. Mike Bailey of 2500 Davis Road in Waynesboro, Virginia. It says, my name is Mike Bailey and I live in the Walnut Grove Farm neighborhood. I have a couple of concerns about the rezoning of 0 Tiffany Drive. My first concern is the traffic on Rosser Avenue. As our small city grows, so does the traffic. I assume the developer will address the traffic coming in and out of the subdivision, but what about the rest of Rosser? Unlike Windy Grove Drive, this portion of Rosser is only a 2-lane road. There is already a lot of traffic due to Walmart and Martin's. What is the city going to do to make sure we do not have gridlock with the increase in housing units? My second concern is the wastewater and sewer issue. The land they want to develop on is wet and marshy. How will the developer deal with the runoff with high density residential units? How will they protect the existing ecosystem and historic Pratt's Run Creek? I know there is plenty of wildlife on this land, as my family enjoys the sight of deer, foxes, rabbits, birds, turtles, etc. in our backyard. It'd be terrible if all the wildlife is displaced due to this development. Our neighborhood is unique. I would describe it as country living in the city. It would be a tragedy for this special charm to be destroyed. My last concern is the integration to the existing neighborhood. As of right now, the existing surrounding neighborhoods are all zoned for RS7 and RS12 single-family homes. With the advent of multifamily high-rises, it will take away the charm and character of the existing neighborhoods. Many property owners, including myself, bought into this neighborhood based on the walkability and bucolic-like atmosphere. It is truly a family neighborhood, as my wife grew up on the very street we now live on. The neighborhoods next to Zero Tiffany Drive are well-established middle-income areas of the city. If developed with multifamily units, the city may be driving out the very people it is trying to attract. How will the developers and city protect the existing neighborhoods? Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, and I have two people in the waiting room who would like to speak now. I'm going to go ahead and admit. One. Oh, wait a minute. That may have been Nicole getting bumped off. All right, again, if you would like to speak in the public hearing, go ahead and dial 301-715-8592. When prompted, enter meeting ID 858-6902-6596. And I will admit you to the meeting.
And if you do come, you should give me your name and address and just be reminded that you only have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes. Mr. Henderson, Mr. Mayor, how long do you all generally wait in the virtual city council public hearings before calling?
Yeah, we haven't really pushed the time limit because we haven't had that many call in.
Yeah. I'm just wondering how long you wait to see if anybody's calling in.
Oh, how many's calling in? We just give them a couple of minutes, and if we don't have anybody calling in, because I announced it at the beginning and just before it starts, and if we don't have any call-ins, we just move on.
This feels like forever.
Now, we've had a decent amount of time
Just
between me
call it.
reading.
Would it be appropriate to have the traffic engineer talk about the traffic in summary at this time while we're waiting for people to call in? Just, it seems like traffic is the number one thing on people's mind, and they're the expert, and they probably know it better than anybody else, and just speak on the summary for everybody's benefit.
There's kind of a spot for him to do that after the public hearing.
Okay.
The applicant gets a chance to, and he could be, if the traffic guy talks, he could talk after the public hearing about the questions raised in the 2 emails.
Okay.
Well, it's up to you, Shannon, how long you think you gotta wait?
I think we're good. I think we've been, for this whole unknown world, I think we've been pretty good. So I'm going to close the public hearing. And now the public hearing is closed. And now if the traffic engineer is here, if he wants to talk to us, maybe he could address some of those concerns in the email. He or she, I'm sorry.
Carl, are you available?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
We sure can. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, great.
Can you give us your name and
Yeah, I'd be
address
glad to.
just to be sure, please?
Yes, Carl Holtgren, and I'm with Ramey Kempen Associates. I'm a resident of Henrico County, and our address is 4343 Cox Road in Glen Allen.
Thank you.
Sure. And I tried to share my camera earlier. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm sitting right in front of my laptop, and that looks nothing like the room I'm sitting in. So I can't explain what my camera's doing. but at least we've got the audio. So
Looks like your
I
camera's in your
apologize for that.
office.
yeah, but it's not even my office. It's weird. Kind of I don't know what's going on there.
Creepy.
So yeah, a little bit. So Luke, I'm very impressed with your Zoom skills. You seem to be an expert at this. I am not. So anyway, I'd be glad to talk a little bit about the traffic. I heard the couple of write-in comments that you had. It sounded like just general concern about traffic congestion in the area on Lou DeWitt and on Rosser. And I also did not hear the most of the intro. So this may be repetitive, but I'll just kind of give you a brief summary of the traffic study. So we met with Luke and with VDOT back, I believe it was in November of last year, and confirmed the intersections that we needed to study based on the size of the project. And we all agreed that we would study the Lou DeWitt median break, where the proposed connection is that you see there on the screen, as well as the Rosser and Tiffany intersection, the existing signal out there, because those two intersections will be the most impacted by the proposed neighborhood here. So we obtained traffic counts, grew those traffic counts, added our site trips, the neighborhood trips to both intersections, and presented a report to the city and to VDOT, which was reviewed. We addressed some comments and submitted a final report, which was approved. Yeah, there you go. Luke's got it on the screen. So Luke, maybe if you can. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, any pages you want me to go to?
This is a good one right here, actually. And I don't know if you're able to zoom in a little bit, just to make it readable. It's really small on my screen, but there you go. So this is the trip generation table for the project. Now the plan calls for roughly 570 to 600 units total. That's everything. We ran the numbers at 600 to be conservative. And let's see, Luke, if you can skip down maybe all the way to the last figure, because that shows our recommendations that we talked about. Yeah, these are the level of service tables for the intersections that we're scrolling through here. We did maybe you can stop here, Will, or sorry, Luke.
Here?
Yeah, that's a good one. So we did at the request of the city and VDOT, we did a signal warrant analysis for the intersection on Rosser, just to see if traffic signal warrants would be met in the future as the project builds out. And this table here shows that the signal warrants will not be met at build out of the neighborhood. There's some very specific requirements. You've probably had these explained to you on other projects. But for signal warrants, we have to have a certain level of traffic throughout the day for different hours. And the very specific thresholds and our build out volumes here do not warrant a traffic signal at the median break. So we're just recommending an unsignalized connection to the median break with separate left and right turn lanes onto Rosser. And the existing median break already. Lou DeWitt, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we weren't confusing everyone.
Yeah, sorry about that, Lou DeWitt. And the existing median break on Lou DeWitt already has a left turn lane that would turn into the project and a northbound right turn lane as well. So those turn lanes are already in place. We would just connect as the fourth leg to that median break. And Luke, if you can skip down to the last figure, because that shows our recommendations. It should be, yeah, here you go.
Here?
Keep going. I'm not sure which figure number it is. It's going to be like 9 or 10. Okay. These are just all of our math for all the calculations. Bingo, this one right here. And if you're able to zoom in a little bit to make it readable. So this, that's okay. So this figure shows the recommendations that we've come up with based on discussions with staff and with VDOT. So at the Lou DeWitt medium break, you can see we're adding the fourth leg there with 2 lanes coming out. Those are the red arrows. And at the request of VDOT, we're going to, the applicant's going to install or paint lane control arrows in the existing turn lanes along Lou DeWitt, because those are not in place today. So just to stripe those arrows. And then what we came up with at Rosser and Tiffany, we've got 2 lanes coming out of Tiffany onto Rosser. We've got 1 left turn lane and then a shared through right. And then as you turn in from Rosser onto Tiffany, there's a short left turn lane that goes into the Walmart, kind of the loading area of the Walmart. So one concern that was identified was the need, looking at the need for that left turn lane into Walmart, and to see if we can basically use that pavement as extra storage for the left turn coming out. Because the corridor study for Rosser Avenue recommends removing the signal at Lenox Place. So those left turns out would most likely come up to Tiffany and turn left out. So that'll increase that left turn movement, as well as the Carflow Farm neighborhood trips. Some of them will come out Tiffany and turn left to head towards downtown. So what we came up with here is basically just restriping that segment of Tiffany Drive to eliminate the left turn lane into the Walmart and just make that a left turn lane from the signal back to the Walmart driveway, just to maximize that storage coming out. So those are the main conclusions and recommendations from the traffic study. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any on the traffic.
I have one. Being you're eliminating the left turn lane into the Walmart, and you're going to use that for storage, turning left onto Rosser, is the road there wide enough for 2 cars to pass if somebody stopped making a left turn into Walmart?
That's a good question. And the answer is no. Tiffany has a 3-lane section. So what we're proposing here is to maintain the 1 inbound lane that goes, back to the Martins. And we worked with VDOT on this. VDOT has very specific requirements for when a left turn lane is required. And it's based on the traffic volumes on Tiffany at the Walmart driveway. And we determined that level of traffic, it's below the threshold that would normally require a turn lane. So we think it'll operate pretty well. And one potential problem with keeping it the way it is if the left turn queue from the signal backs up into the through lane on Tiffany, then they could be blocking the Walmart driveway, and then it would be more difficult to turn left into the Walmart. Whereas with the restriping, you can get all of those left turners at the signal kind of out of the way. They can stack all the way back to the driveway if they had to and still not block the driveway. So if you're turning left into Walmart from Tiffany, this should be a better situation. It's less likely to be blocked.
Oh, okay. I was just curious about the elimination of that, what the effect was on the through traffic to like Buffalo Wild Wings, Martins, and eventually Carflow.
Right. No, it's a good question. It's something that VDOT specifically asked about it, and Luke as well. And we looked at it, and we determined that left turn lane is really not warranted. It's a nice to have, but it's not really needed for that level of traffic. And that pavement is better used as left turn storage for the outbound left. It's a better use of that pavement.
you have a number of other access points for someone who's coming up Rosser and turning left. Part of the redundancy of that particular left turn is that if you're going northbound, northeast on Rosser, and then you're trying to turn left into Walmart, you've already had 2 opportunities prior to this to get there. And so that's part of why that route isn't used very often. If you're coming southbound in, then it might be more useful, but then you have several right in, right out options at Lennox and Lucy to access. So if it does become a more inconvenient spot, then I would just expect more of the Walmart traffic to get pushed to the other entrances.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Are you saying then that when you come out of Martin's, you cannot anymore, you cannot turn right to go to Walmart?
No, you can.
You can, you still can.
No,
this doesn't eliminate any movements.
Right.
Okay.
It just means that you won't have as much storage here to back up. Like if you have several cars waiting to turn left into Walmart, but generally there's no one there's no cars using the storage here to back up. Yeah, but you'll still be able to make a left turn.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions?
I do. I'm going to take a swing at it. I don't remember where it was in the report, but it said that the traffic was going to increase from 3.5 seconds to 13.5 seconds, give or take. Can you explain what that means to someone who doesn't know anything about it? Like, where are the seconds? Or is that too vague because I don't remember where it was in the report?
Yeah. Do you remember which intersection it was or which movement?
No, I don't.
There's a lot of number. Okay. Yeah, Luke, maybe if you can scroll up to the level of service tables, kind of in the middle of the report. Yeah, I guess the best way to answer it is, the existing intersections have movements and traffic, obviously, and those drivers experience a certain level of delay today. And when we grow the background traffic or when we add some additional traffic, the delays for some of the movements will obviously increase. I don't know which specific movement you're talking about. Like, for example, here's the level of service table for Rosser Avenue and Tiffany Drive, the existing signal there at the Walmart and the Martins. So the top row, it shows we have a level service A with an average delay of 8.2 seconds per car. Okay. And in the PM peak hour, it's level service B at 14.1 seconds per car. And, we evaluate all signalized intersections on level of service, and it's an A through F range, kind of like your grades at school, A, B, C, D, E, and F. And just like in school, level service A is the best. That's the lowest delay for everybody. That's how traffic engineers evaluate things, is how much delay are drivers experiencing. And it goes all the way to level service F, which means, a lot of congestion. It takes 2 or 3 cycles to get through the signal and so forth. So what we found here is this particular signal, it's level service A in the morning and a B in the PM, which is really good overall operation. Because we're, level service D is acceptable to VDOT for the peak hours. Level service D, you're starting to see some congestion, but everybody generally gets through the intersection on every signal cycle. So if we're in the A-B range, that's really good overall operation. So you might see there's some increase. For example, if we're looking at the PM peak hour here, which is the worst case for this intersection, the existing condition is a level service B at 14 seconds of delay per car. And the bottom row represents full build out of the site. Also 6 years of background growth built into the numbers, plus taking the Lennox signal out from the Walmart. So some of those people divert over to Tiffany. And then we have our neighborhood fully built out as well. So a lot of things happening there, and we're still in the level service B range at 17.9 seconds. So you can see the overall delay increases by approximately 4 seconds per car, but we're still in the level service B range, which goes from 10 to 20 seconds. So I don't know if that helps answer your question,
Yeah, it
but
does.
that's okay. I mean, that's basically how we do it, is we look at the current conditions, add the additional traffic, and then evaluate the future conditions, and then see if those are still acceptable.
So
Thank you.
do you anticipate any backups from the Lou DeWitt and Rosser intersection there from all of the extra cars that are coming out of Tiffany?
That's a good question. We did not have to analyze that intersection in this traffic study.
Okay.
The Lou DeWitt Rosser signal, which I know is a busy intersection. Our company, we've studied it before on other projects. But for this particular project, you know, the trip impact of this proposed neighborhood, it's just not big enough to study an intersection that far away. So that's why we focused on the two access points, basically, the new intersection on Lou DeWitt and then the signal at Tiffany, because that's where our impact is going to be.
Carl, do you know your is there in here something where it shows the total trips that you expect to move in that direction? So we can look at, you have probably what, 30,000 cars a day at that intersection.
Yeah, it'll be in the figures. If you look at, it's going to be like figure 5 or 6. We have a specific figure for that. Let's see. Yeah, you can keep going. Okay, you can hold it here if you can. Yeah, there you go. So, and scroll up maybe just a little bit so we can see the top of the figure. There, perfect. So this figure just shows the expected distribution of our neighborhood trips. So if you see the boxes or the numbers in the 4 boxes, like to the north, we're expecting that 20% of our trips will be to and from the north on Lou DeWitt, and then 35% will be to and from the south on Lou DeWitt, heading toward the Rosser signal. And then on the Tiffany Drive side, we expect 20% to go to and from the east and 25% to go to and from the west. And this is based on, looking at traffic patterns in the area, talking to Luke, talking to VDOT. So if you if you look at this figure, then we expect about 60% of our neighborhood trips to pass through the Lou DeWitt and Rosser intersection. It'd be the 35 plus the 25. And Luke, if you scroll down to the next page, that should show you the actual traffic volumes. Yep, perfect. So these are really small on my screen, but this is at full build out of the neighborhood. This is the number of cars per hour we can expect to head toward that signal. So it looks like in the morning, I see 96 turning left out onto Lou DeWitt, and I believe that's 69 turning right out onto Rosser. So roughly 160 cars in the AM peak hour would head in that direction. They wouldn't all get to that intersection, but most of them would. So over the course of an hour, that's about, we're going to be adding about 2 or 3 cars per minute to that intersection. So the impact there is going to be very small to the beginning, considering how much traffic's already there. Obviously this project will add a little bit of traffic to it, but it's not going to be significant.
Just to give you
a lot of our residents. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to say, just to give you I was thinking of some sense of scale for folks. Obviously every additional development is going to add some traffic. So, it's not a wrong argument to make for these folks, but in terms of the scale of what we'll probably be adding there, that's an intersection that handles close to probably 30,000 cars a day. So you're talking about adding maybe in the hundreds or up as much as 1,000 to that. Is that accurate to say, Carl?
Let me see. Yeah, if you go back up to the trip table, it'd be about 60% of the daily trips. I've got the paper report here in front of me.
But that's not consistent day to day. That, I mean, you're going to have a bottlenecks in the morning and bottlenecks in the afternoon. I mean, that's
Mhm.
when people are coming and going to work. That's going to, that
Right.
thing was a concern
Right.
about getting onto the interstate.
Yeah.
It's pretty congested right now with what we've got.
Mhm.
Understood. Yeah, those are the times of day that we study in the study. It's the commuter peak hours, 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the afternoon. So let's see. So our project generates just under 5,000 trips per day. It's about 4,700 trips per day, with 60% of those going through that intersection. So that's roughly 2,500 to 3,000 trips per day going through the intersection.
Yeah. You're looking at something like a 10% increase in traffic, you think, at that intersection, Carl? Would that be, or less than that, or?
Yeah, at the high end, I think, it would be 10% at the high end. It'd be less than that, I think.
And that's
It's definitely-
that's a full build out though, right?
Yeah, if there's 600 units.
That's correct. Yeah,
Maybe
6
VDOT
years
will
from
have
now.
fixed that intersection by then. Maybe some miracle will have happened.
I was going to mention that.
I mean-
I think just to clarify that every additional development does add traffic. If we add tons and tons of houses across the city, we'll have more traffic. That's kind of how it works. So definitely, I'm just trying to get a sense of the scale of what it's going to add. In terms of things, that is our most congested corridor. It's still not technically congested compared to what VDOT considers from other metro areas, but it's our heaviest trafficked area. We do have the Rosser Avenue corridor study improvements hopefully coming down the pipe,
Right.
that will reduce travel time through that intersection. So we hope to be getting quite a bit of benefit already. That should give us some more capacity on that road.
Luke, since you're talking about that, Pratt's Run spills out on that also, not at the same places. How much more traffic, or do you know what the figure might be for that?
You're talking about this development here?
Yes, sir.
That's a much smaller one. They have maybe 50 lots left or something like that. So
Okay.
I'd expect Pratt's Run to have a pretty nominal effect compared to this development. The Carflow Farm development being proposed tonight's an order of magnitude larger than that.
Okay.
That one. Yeah. This is definitely, and I mean, I think this is an important one for us to consider. This is definitely the largest proposed development in this area, for sure.
Okay, then I think we're good if we don't have any more questions. And then Kira or Luke, do you have any more things to say?
Unless there's I should mention, I expected them to call in, but they did not. The developers of the property just north here, this is Silver Creek, the remaining section, have contacted me and wanted to express that they had hoped that we would require some kind of connection to their property for the Carflow Farm development. That would involve crossing a creek, which would be fairly expensive. But they are currently under a deal which requires them to connect out to Bookerdale Road, which will be fairly expensive for them. So they would rather have a connection that's closer to where their development is. But I've said that would provide better internal traffic flow as well for this neighborhood to reach some of the commercial that's down here. So that's, I expected them to call in on the public comment, but just thought I'd mention that as well.
I'll just say that the right-of-way we have platted, the area in red, does connect to their property. So there's a connection available for them should they choose it. That goes to the edge of their property.
Though obviously the current development is not actually building a road to the edge of their
Right.
property. So
Okay, Any other initial debate among us planning commissioners?
Do you need a motion to close public comment,
Uh,
or where we at?
I think I need a motion. Well, maybe I did something wrong. No, I closed the public hearing. Oh, no, I need a motion to recommend the zoning change.
I move we recommend the zoning change per staff recommendations.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, then I will call for a vote for the rezoning request by Riverbend Development on behalf of Rosser Avenue Development LLC to rezone the property at 0 Tiffany Drive, Waynesboro, Virginia, City Tax Map number 41-3-1112, currently rezoned as RS12 Single Family Residential HB Highway Business to RG5 General Residential and RMF Multifamily Residential. To a vote. Everyone in favor?
One thing, I think you said the city map number is 41-3-112, not 1112.
Okay, I amend that, please. 112. Do I need to read it again, or are we good?
No, ma'am, you're good.
No.
Okay, so can we take a vote? Everyone in favor?
Aye.
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 Everyone not in favor? So the motion carries to recommend the rezoning of city tax map number 41-3-112, currently zoned RS12 and HB to RG5 and RMF. Okay, so
Great. Thank you for your time tonight.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, and this is just our regular meeting stuff. I realized that I was supposed to see if anybody wanted to talk for non-agenda items, and I skipped that, but I'm gonna blame it on the COVID because this was kind of weird. There was nobody waiting. So I missed my citizen comment period. Is it okay if I do it now? But I don't think we have any citizens waiting to comment, do we?
Ask our resident attorney, Mr. Airy. I think that's fine.
I think you're fine.
Okay.
Actually, it's
Okay.
not even on the agenda, I think.
But it's on my cheat sheet.
I understand.
Look,
It's
It's
our
on my
bad then.
cheat sheet.
That's us, not you then.
And
Okay.
Shannon, I'll take the opportunity to apologize for stepping in on that number, but thought we needed to make it very clear so there's no question in the future.
Oh, no apology necessary. Thank you so much for helping us. And now we can have an update on the smart scale applications for 2020.
Fantastic. You all should be familiar with most of these projects, so I'm just going to go over them fairly quickly. But I would have presented these to you before we went to City Council, but we needed to get the resolutions of support, and we weren't meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and share the smart scale applications that we are hoping to present in the current round. So I can share my screen. As you all know from previous years, or if you're new to us, you may not, that Smart Scale governs the disbursement of grant funds for new transportation infrastructure. We have other programs that we get money for existing infrastructure maintenance. And it's held every 2 years. It's basically just a big game show competition where all the localities put in their best project and try to get money from the state. It's the successor to the old 6-year improvement plan system. The idea was that it would be a little bit less political and a little bit more objective as a way to spend state money. So rather than simply going through a political process where it's decided how things are spent, we'll have objective criteria that will grade all the projects on. So every region and locality can submit projects. The money is split into district grant and statewide high priority pots to ensure some kind of geographic parity. Our projects are just not really competitive with Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads. You know, we're talking about congestion on Rosser Avenue. And when we actually talked about congestion on Rosser Avenue to the state folks that came in, they visibly laughed at us compared to their other areas of the state where they have congestion issues. So for that reason, they have district grants where we have a certain amount of money for the Stanton district, so that we're assured some projects in this district, even if they, our numbers aren't as competitive with Northern Virginia, for instance. The localities of Waynesboro sides can submit up to 4 applications each cycle, and the NPO and Bright can also submit applications. So projects are scored on 6 metrics, only 5 for us. We don't use the land use metric. And that's safety, congestion mitigation, accessibility, economic development, and environmental quality. And in our area, the big ones are safety and accessibility. We have a lot of issues with safety on our roads, and we also have a lot of issues with, alternative modes of transportation, walking and biking, being able to access spots. And then economic development can be a big one as well. You'll get points if you construct a project that allows for more economic development projects. In the last 3 rounds of Smart Scale, we've submitted a number of applications, and 3 of them have been successful. So the 3 that have been successful were in 2014, we got the Southern Connector, Shenandoah Village Drive extension. That's the road from Target all the way over to Delphine Avenue south of the highway. So that'll actually alleviate some traffic at the Dewitt-Rosser intersection, hopefully, because it'll provide an alternative for people getting off the highway who want to get to Lyndhurst Road. They won't have to go up to Meadowbrook. They'll be able to cut over directly to Lyndhurst. That project has had quite a few delays, but it is still moving forward slowly. There was wetlands permits and the park issue, railroad crossing issue, all kinds of stuff has held that project up. But it is still motoring forward with estimated completion in 2022 or 2023. In the 2018 round of Smart Scale, we had 2 projects get funded. One of them was the East Main Streetscape and Multi-Use Path, which I think we presented on before. That'll add street trees and clean up sidewalk connections all along East Main Street. And then also reconfigure East Main Street from the brewery all the way out to the eastern city line by getting rid of the bike lanes, restoring parallel parking on one side of the street, narrowing the road slightly, and then adding a separated biking and walking path. So it'll extend a greenway all the way out to the east side of the city. And that'll hopefully connect to where we'd like a Crozet Tunnel connector to come in. And then the 13th and Rosser roundabout was funded for that cycle as well. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that project. That was a big, lots of hubbub about that one. The situation there is that the current stop signs that are out there, it wasn't even really warranted that a signal would be put back. And so we felt that we could wait. Part of the problem with Smart Scale is that it takes forever to get the funding, as you can see from these dates. And so felt like we could wait on that one and use Smart Scale money rather than city money on it. So for our 2020 applications, again, it's a 6-year program. So generally you get funding, you actually get your money dispersed 6 years after the original application year. It's a really wild system. So these have to be kind of long-term projects. So the first application we have is our Rosser Avenue corridor improvements. This is based on the 2018 corridor study conducted by Kinley Horn. This was a study that proposed, first of all, coordinated signal timings for there's 9 traffic lights all the way up and down the Rosser Avenue corridor, one of them being out in the county. And it proposed synchronizing those signals and then upgrading the equipment in them. The first thing that it proposed was simply coordinated timings, an alternative set of timings that would move traffic through there quicker. And we've already implemented that. But that's just somebody going out there and setting their watch and setting the timing correctly. But the actual signal boxes are from the 70s or 80s or whenever they were installed. They're not hooked up to any kind of fiber internet or anything like that. And so part of the proposal in this application would upgrade all those signals to modern equipment. It would be connected by fiber optic cables. They could be synced in real time, could stay synced and communicate with each other. And that'll move traffic through there significantly faster. You can change all the signals at once, move a full cohort of cars all the way through without having to stop at a light, then change the lights, move traffic in from side streets. So that'll be a big improvement there. And then there's also a number of actual concrete infrastructure improvements as well, realignments at various intersections, Lennox Lane. So a number of improvements included in that application. This one actually is likely to score so well that it might actually get statewide money from the statewide high priority pot rather than our district grant. And that's why the MPO may be applying for it. They'll try to free up, and oftentimes they'll do that. If there's a project in the Stanton district that scores well enough to get state money, the MPO will put it in, and that'll free up money for everybody in the district from our district pot. The second application that we're making is a large one, and that's the West Main STAR study recommendations. This is a STAR study is a program that VDOT funds to do really in-depth transportation studies on corridors that hopefully produce high-scoring smart scale applications. And so they identified the West Main Street corridor as, first of all, a particularly dangerous corridor in the city. We've had quite a few injury and fatal accidents out there. So they focused on safety improvements throughout that area and accessibility improvements. The proposal that came back was finally presented to council, and I think hopefully you all took the survey when the public response survey came out. They had over almost 1,000 respondents to that, which is a really high level of public engagement for a project like this. It was great. And the final proposal was to maintain a 4-lane section through West Main Street, but to replace the shared center left turn lane, which is really the source of all these problems, with planted medians to allow street trees, allow for U-turns, and then allow a contiguous sidewalk on one side. Kind of what we have a lot of in Waynesboro is these 60-foot wide roads that are just consistent pavement, just with markings and a shared center left turn lane. Those are appropriate often in rural contexts, but the more traffic you put on them, the more dangerous they get, because you have basically infinite conflict points and people turning in and out, trying to cut across traffic. And so the more commercial development you get, the more dangerous those roads become. And that's the situation we're getting into with West Main Street. I believe we've had, in the last 6 years, 2 fatal accidents and 300 serious injury accidents, which is, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of safety benefit that will count for us. So we're hopeful that this project will get funded and we'll have a very high safety benefit score from this. The third project we're proposing is the Broad Street Access Management Plan. We've put this in before. We put it in 2018, and it was just too expensive to get funded at the score that we got for it. It has been called out as a priority by every city plan since 2001. The 2001 Witzel Downtown Plan talked about trying to add medians and beautify the corridor, but also to improve pedestrian accessibility and safety. Same problem as West Main Street, that 60-foot wide road, extremely hostile to pedestrians, dangerous for vehicle travel, and with a lot of commercial entrances on it. Not quite as dangerous as West Main Street because the commercial entrances are spaced further apart, but still a problem. So the previous application didn't score well enough, and that was partially because of how expensive it was. So we have a revamped version of the application that we worked with VDOT to put together. It's significantly cheaper. It only includes sidewalk on one side rather than trying to build sidewalk on both sides, because that's where we ran into a lot of our costs with utilities and right-of-way. So we're trying to avoid having any kind of utility movement or right-of-way costs here. This is a drawing, incidentally, from the 2001 Witzel Downtown Plan, showing what medians could look like along the length of Broad Street, with occasional breaks for turn lanes and entrances similar to West Main Street. So our proposal would add sidewalk on the north side of the road. So there's already quite a bit of sidewalk there, but there's quite a few gaps as well. You'll see desire paths where people just walk on the grass and it makes a little rut. You can see them out near where Broad Street hits East Main Street. You can see them near Gavitt's Steakhouse. You can see quite a few areas where there's missing sidewalk and those desire paths get built in. This will make it safer for pedestrians to cross the road by reducing the length that they have to cross. I've been very big on this project because I think that Broad Street's profile really cuts the city in half. It cuts off the northern neighborhoods from downtown and the rest of the city for pedestrians. The Greenway, I think, helped with that, providing some kind of access underneath the bridge, but it provides an alternative there.
Hey, Luke, is there any bike path on that road?
No, and there really wasn't space to keep all 4 lanes. Planners will tell you that you don't really need 4 lanes. The traffic out there is small enough that you could easily have 2 lanes and we could cut that back. But I'm sure most of the businesses and most residents would prefer to have all 4 still. That was a message that came back loud and clear from the West Main Street study. So we're not trying to bite off too much here. We're just trying to get those medians in and improve the safety situation at the moment. The fourth application you're very familiar with already. It's the Crozet Tunnel Trail. This one honestly is a little speculative. We had 3 good applications and we had a 4th spot open. And there was briefly a thought that there might be a huge influx of cash into the Smart Scale program. So VDOT called around and said, if you have any additional applications, put them in. And so we have the Crozet Tunnel Trail application. It's it's already very detailed. You need a certain amount of preliminary engineering and planning work to even be able to put in an application. And we have a lot of that with the Crozet Tunnel Trail. We already have an engineering study. We already have the information that we gathered we applied for the build grant unsuccessfully. And so we're sort of just testing the waters here of seeing whether this will score well with Smart Scale. It doesn't give you congestion mitigation. You're not moving any cars. This is a pedestrian trail, but it does provide a pretty significant amenity that we think we can argue economic development points. And also, we do have a number of pedestrian crashes out on East Main Street because folks try to walk down the side of that road down the mountain, and this provides an alternative for them. Still held back. This project is really hampered by the cost. You have to cross a live railroad track in order to get there. And so far the railroad has only been open to a tunnel underneath the rail tracks. They've not been open to any kind of at-grade crossing or anything. So that's just kind of blowing up the cost right off the bat for this. So for years, we still tried to kind of look for different options to make it happen. And so proposing to put it in this round to see. But again, we only really had 3 projects that we felt like were good projects, had sufficient engineering, and were going to score well enough to be worth putting in, and didn't have to be done immediately. So we felt like this was a good project to put in for the 4th one. Though that is the proposal. Any questions about these projects or why we picked them or things that we should have thought about? Sorry, I should have brought this to you before we went to council for our resolutions.
What's the time frame for hearing if they've been accepted?
We would hear about awards next spring. Yeah, and as I said, it's a long. This is for the state's 6-year money, so the money wouldn't actually get to us until 2026, really. But line it up for our successors to enjoy.
Kira take care of getting it spent.
Yeah. Kira will make sure it happens. That's what they always tell me here too. Or, the older city employees will say, well, you'll see it. I won't see it.
Well, thank you for putting all the work into those applications.
Thanks. Kira did quite a bit of the work on the application. So thank her. She's been hard at work on those.
Okay, any other questions on the Smart Scale applications? Because if not, we can move on to the presentation of the basic city land use plans, scenarios, and request for direction from the Planning Commission.
You know what I want here? So I don't have an elaborate presentation, but we do need to talk about this. We had a long discussion. We've had several now sort of general discussions about the direction of this program, and I don't need a vote tonight, but maybe if not tonight, then next meeting. We kind of need to know where we're headed with it, because I think that we've gathered the data, we've gathered a survey, we sort of know what the situation is. So at some point, we're going to have to make a decision about what direction to take this, and this would be a Planning Commission proposal. So it really needs to be you all's decision as far as what you think is worth pursuing. So I just thought that I'd present and sort of summarize where we're at and just inform you of any recent developments that might inform since the last time we talked. One of those is we have had a change of ownership of the parcels on 300 block where the Fishburne properties are. I believe the woman that came to our meeting who owns the apartments next door is purchasing those buildings from Fishburne. And so she has some ideas, but has not lined up anything yet. But we may be dealing with a different owner there.
Did she make any indication as to what she might be wanting to do there, Luke?
I think she's hoping to restore at least the brick buildings and get her office for the apartment complex into there and create some kind of common space for her residents so that there's some use that's beneficial to the residents next door. She hopes to get a business into one of the other buildings. She's still looking into which ones are salvageable. But obviously COVID-19 has held up some business prospects. But yeah, I think she's probably more motivated to make something happen there, but she'll be up against all the same fiscal problems that everyone else who's looked into those properties is.
Did
But
she buy the 3 empty lots between the railroad track and 305 Delphine, Luke? Or did she just buy the Fishburne buildings on Commerce?
I believe she just bought the Fishburne buildings on Commerce.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure which ones. Yeah. So that's an issue that's come up. Another thing to be aware of is that we have the CDBG money, which isn't a lot of money, but we can do small projects with it. And so we're trying to focus on basic city. We currently have the city's engineers working on whether we can design a 4th Street sidewalk and Delphine crossing. 4th Street is the main east-west artery through that area, and it's the place where we have the most pedestrian traffic, mostly because folks walk down from the quadrangle apartments. And there's no really good crossing of Delphine Avenue. And so we have them looking into whether they can create a pedestrian refuge in the middle or somehow make that, because kind of like how I said Broad Street cuts off Wayne Hills from downtown. Delphine really cuts off East Basic City from the main part of Basic City. And so that's something that we're working on. We still have the issue that I mentioned last time with the landscaping equipment at 408. We've kind of given him an extension basically because of his situation, which is pretty rough. But that's one example of an issue that's out there. That's your recent developments. To recap, and Kira, you can correct anything here, but we had a resident survey, provided that to all of you all. There was mixed results to it. People were generally open to a range of uses. Everyone would like there to be more retail demand, so would the city, but obviously that's the whole problem, is that there isn't. Some of the homeowners, I'd say most of the homeowners said, let the property stay vacant until the right use comes. And pretty much all the commercial property owners said allow anything rather than letting them stay vacant, as you'd expect. And then most of the residential rental property owners were more with the commercial property owners, but sort of in the middle. So kind of a mixed set of results from that, as you might expect. So which direction do we take this? To me, and you all can correct me if you see another route. To me, we have basically 3 options. The first option is to stick to the status quo, zoning wise. Zoning wise, it's currently local business. It's zoned for retail, a mix of low to medium density housing, some duplexes, houses, maybe upstairs apartments, civic centers, other neighborhood commercial uses. There's some industrial uses present, but they're non-conforming. So if we stick with the status quo, I think our strategy would be to just continue holding on for reinvestment. Just try to continue to keep the properties from sliding further into disrepair and just look for some kind of turnaround in that area to spark more reinvestment. We can try to help that along by focusing on using CDBG money to do some sidewalk and lighting improvements to maybe improve the public right of way. We've already for a long time had enterprise zone and economic development incentives in place. So all the stuff the city does for businesses, it already applies to that area. But we would just continue to want to work with any property owners to support investment possible. So that to me is strategy number 1. Strategy number 1 is we stick with small shops, more retail and residential mix, and we just continue what we're doing right now, continue holding on for that area picking up, and maybe try to do what we can here and there with infrastructure. Option number 2 is to open up the zoning towards some industrial and lower value uses, like kind of like what I presented last time, an industrial revitalization zone. This would involve creating a new zone that would allow a larger array of lower value uses with restrictions to make them compatible with the housing. Examples of the kind of thing that does do well, that is making money over there. The McClung Printing Company is there in Commerce. This is the car, what is it, Gassman's Auto, that's on Bayard. But try to just accept whatever activity is economically viable there to help it recover. But try to do that without actually rezoning it to industrial, without actually making it an industrial area. The strategy to me there would be bring the current uses like McClung Printing into conformance so that they're legally allowed and can expand if they want to. Allow some more uses that are generally prohibited in LB, like small scale manufacturing, machine shops, auto repair, equipment yards, that kind of thing. But put in some additional use standards that limit noise, pollution, limit the hours of operation, require better screening, try to make those uses as compatible with the houses as possible. And that's something that we could possibly also use on maybe Ohio Street or Bayard Avenue, similar areas like that where there's houses present, but where the main focus is more the commercial property. The third option to me is that we tighten the zoning. We really try to push it towards residential. In the absence of real commercial demand, we slowly ease those industrial uses out and try to make it into a nicer place to live, so that there's more residential demand there. That would probably mean more multifamily demand in this area. It's, with a busy road in between a busy road and a railroad track, it's probably not going to attract a lot of single family investment, or at least newer stuff. But we wouldn't necessarily threaten the current businesses, but we would focus on only supporting down zonings and investments that would make it a nicer for the residences. And eventually try to end up with just a residential corridor through there. So that is my summary of the three options. Again, kind of status quo, focus on what we're doing now, open up more to allow more uses, and try to just get more investment and more activity there, even if it's not exactly what we want. And then try to tighten the zoning and try to push it towards residential, with the hopes that maybe this could be an area that could be better to live in if there were fewer abandoned commercial properties. Am I missing anything as far as what our options are?
If I was wanting to open a restaurant and then there was an incentive for me to do it, like half parking or something like that, which one of these strategies would that fall into?
The parking thing, could work with anything. I think regardless of what we pursue as far as the use zoning, we could definitely try to reduce the parking requirement here. I would say under all of these strategies, we would try to make some investments and beautify the right of way a little bit. We'd want to we don't have a lot of money to do that, but we try to at least improve the sidewalks, improve the look, and we would probably also want to look at parking. So it sounds like everybody's on board with those things. So I would say we would do that in all three scenarios.
Okay.
So Luke, can we do a mixed zoning? All the street across from the railroad tracks be more where we would push the industrial or the commercial, and then leave the ones, behind that more for residential, because I think we're not going to be able to go back and make something residential once you've said, okay, let's push the commercial, or
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah.
So I think that but you're right, I don't think that there along the railroad track is not going to be where people are going to want to live, but I think it's a great place to shop, or have some retail there. But so if we could do some kind of a mixed zoning, might be an option. Just a suggestion.
Yeah. You're talking about what kind of mix? So you're thinking we keep, it sounds to me like you're emphasizing you're more in favor of the status quo option. So we stick to kind of a mix of residential and neighborhood commercial uses on Commerce. And then just like we have now, we try to keep more industrial stuff across the train tracks on Bayard. Is that accurate?
Yeah, retail or industrial, yeah. But because like I said, there's not going to be going back. You can't go back to residential if people decide that's what they want to do there. And investors, there may be someone who comes along and wants to, buy, to reestablish this neighborhood more for residential and make it a nicer place to live and make it a safer place to live and more desirable. But if you've zoned it where you're going to be able to bring in more commercial buildings in industry than industrial sites, that's going to be harder to do. So what is the end result we want to look at? I guess that's what we want to, when we look back, what are we setting it up for? I guess what's the end picture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the end, are we hoping to end up with more of a residential neighborhood or more of a commercial neighborhood or more of a mix? Or
Right,
I think that we need to, at least from my opinion, the status quo isn't working. There's nothing coming in there really. I mean, we have the occasional businesses. I think making it an interesting section of town with its own sort of zoning and where we can be flexible and figure out what works with what and have an interesting mix of things would be something new that would cost us very little, as opposed to the hit and miss zoning that's there now. Why would I want to develop something if something next to me is zoned completely inappropriately?
well, that's what I was saying too, is that with the mixed zoning, you're gonna, along the railroad tracks, people are gonna opt to open retail there or commercial businesses. And
But I think
nobody,
that's going to be the natural flow of things. And that's what we're here for. When we have that zoning, we decide who goes where. When we have, I'm all for B. I'm for Plan B.
Yeah. Well, Bobby, you live there. What do you think?
Or Mike, right?
arts,
Well,
we
I'm
don't,
I'm just thinking of, the main corridor there is got the train traction. It's really industrial,
Mhm.
commercial. And I know the purchaser of the Fishburne property, she was interested in maybe putting a restaurant in that area.
Yeah.
So,
But she can do now under the status quo zoning. Yeah.
right. And that's what I'm thinking. If we get more people like her that's investing,
Right.
do the status quo along that, and then maybe on the other side of the tracks, you have more residential, which we currently have now. So it's kind of like the status quo.
Yeah.
what I'd like kind of see happen on the residential side is kind of what happened a little further on down Delphine, Luke, just past Allied. I forget who bought that series of houses down through there, but they demolished all them old dilapidated houses and built those nice single family homes. Yeah, right in there. Cause that right there really made that particular stretch of Delphine a lot better looking. And I know they've built 2 or 3 more across the street, and I'm not sure who's doing that, but as far as some of those houses that are in that area, I would love to see somebody come in there and, buy them up and rebuild decent looking houses in there that then would attract your restaurants and your businesses, along with the lighting and sidewalk improvements.
That's a good picture of basic you've got up there now, Luke. You've got your neighborhood to the north and west, and then you've got your light industrial there towards the center and around the train tracks. And if you get some restaurants and mixed use going up Charlotte there, I think that would be a good plan for Basic City.
Yeah.
But if someone wanted to bring, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, no, the residential above the restaurants or below, kind of a live, work, and play area.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the right restaurant right there where the lady bought, if she puts the right kind of restaurant in there, she'll make a killing.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a grocery store. It doesn't have to be a big box store, just something that you can walk to.
Yeah, a mom and pop grocery store type deal.
But and a coffee shop and a barber shop and blah 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 blah.
We've got the barber. Has anybody drove down and looked at the outside of the new barber shop that we approved here a few months ago?
Oh, it looks great.
I did that today.
It looks great.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful building now. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff we want to see happening. So Luke, I'm hearing that there's nothing stopping us from doing that right now, right?
Right. Yeah. That's what it's zoned for right now. Yeah.
And I think if it's only going to take a couple of those really to start that interest in somebody else doing it, you know, to light the fire, and then, you know, people, you know, may say, hey, I want to do that too. But yeah, so I mean, I don't want to change the ability of you know, the zoning for that. I just see trying to make it residentially, have the residential section, try to, you know, eventually over the years make a really nice neighborhood, you know, and improvements there. And then also have the industrial side of it, maybe from, you know, from Commerce over to the railroad tracks would be.
So if I'm hearing overall a sentiment of at least three of you towards kind of the status quo option, are there elements of the changes we talked about, like Lowry mentioned the parking reduction, that we do want to try to pursue somehow? Like, are there specific uses that aren't allowed in LB? Like, for instance, the McClung printer there. If another company like that came along and wanted to build on Commerce, what would we say to that?
I think we ought to consider that if there's an appropriate light industry that wants to come in, that doesn't create a lot of noise, isn't slaughtering cattle, that would be appropriate, because you've got it all intermixed anyway.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't want to see the light industrial spread out into the residential areas that I think that would, we'd never be able to bring that back. And
That's true.
yeah, and but I think by putting in the new lighting and doing the things that you said you were going to do, Luke suggested, I think that's a good start. I mean, we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
start
don't think we
small
should stay the same.
and see what feeds off of that.
Maybe I should come back with a proposal that's a little bit more, that involves some zoning changes here, but is a little bit more limited in terms of we only go for stuff that we're sure would not, you know, we don't want something that's going to degrade the corridor at all, but only things that will, like McClung, you mentioned it's contained. There's no noise, no light, no, you know, kind of other impacts like that.
Yeah, the environmental effects need to be minimal, I think. Yeah.
I'm hearing somewhere, but maybe we want to be somewhere between status quo and option B then.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say, Luke, somewhere in between there, especially around the areas where you already have light industry.
Option B plus.
All right.
Okay.
Maybe. All right.
Yeah,
So we can do that.
I think containing that light industrial in that strip between Delphine and the train tracks is appropriate, and taking it up to the main intersection at the light and not letting it, like right now, I don't think that the garage that's on the corner of 6th and Delphine, I don't think that's appropriate for that area, because if I remember right, they tore down a house to build that garage there.
Oh, wait, that's 6.
Oh, that's Joe's place. You too far up.
I'm going the wrong direction.
Right there, the red roof. No, right there. 6th and Delphine. Yeah, right there. Because if I remember right, I think they tore a house down to put that garage there. But that would have been more appropriate on the other side of Delphine.
Yeah.
Over here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd come up with a more limited proposal then. That tries to still aim towards it long term, having houses and yeah. Right. Anybody disagree?
Nope, I think that sounds great.
I was going through those minutes from last time earlier, and I remember reading this, but the guy that does the 408 diners wanting to put his landscape business there. How does that fit into your plan here?
That was just an example I brought up as the kind of thing that the kind of issue that we deal with. That actually specifically has become more of an issue. But it's a spot where he's just up against the train tracks, there's nobody on the other side, an empty lot behind, and then the Comcast behind him. And he's saying, well, can I screen everything in and park my trucks there? And that's very much the kind of use we'd say, well, that's not appropriate in local business. That's not something you'd want in a neighborhood commercial area.
Right.
But if you look at the spot, we're starting to say, well, is that a terrible, if that's a use for the property? So kind of the feeling that I got last meeting was that people were kind of saying, no, it still really isn't an appropriate use there.
If he had retail with it, kind of like the Waynesboro Garden Center,
Right.
or even Shrek Eyes over up the road next to Verona, Kieseltown. It would look a lot better.
So that's a good example of kind of what I was proposing under option B, that maybe we're trying to pull back from that level of option B.
Yeah.
Okay, and and I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I just remember reading that when I was going through the minutes today, and I'm like, well, this might be. I guess the 408 diner didn't make it.
No.
No,
I'm gonna be honest, Bobby. I didn't even know he was even open.
I didn't either.
No,
I mean, there was no advertisement, no signs, no fanfare, no nothing.
So Luke, how many trucks does he want to park there?
They're there now, so you can go out
Yeah,
and see.
it's like 25 of them there. 20.
Oh,
Yeah, and see if
I was gonna say easily more than 10.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely more than that. So generally, if it was allowed, if it was a legal use, they'd have to submit a site plan and they'd have to construct like a fence that wouldn't be see-through or whatever. We've kind of just been holding off on enforcement, trying to get a sense for where this process is headed. But we're leaning towards it's not going to be a legal use. It just is going to have to clear them out.
Probably need to make that decision sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
We do. That's why I'm trying to get a feel from y'all what direction we're headed with this.
can there be a limit on the number of trucks he parks there? I mean, where is it?
I mean,
where is it not? Because look at this spot. There's no residential over there, is it?
We could.
Right
I mean,
on
we
the
could.
other side of Comcast, there's a house.
Yeah, well, I mean, if that's where we're going to allow the light industry, if that's what we're saying, that's going to be appropriate kind of a business on that kind of a street. And if you can, if you can limit, I think 25 trucks is pretty heavy,
Well, my thing is, it really isn't a business. It just becomes a lay down yard.
It's not generating activity. It's not really
Yeah.
generating like customers for other
All it
businesses.
becomes is free storage
Okay.
for his mulch, gravel. It's not like the garden center where he's got trees out there to sell and
Gotcha.
mulch in the back that he's going to sell by the pickup loads.
Yeah.
Or even if he had an office there, that might change it.
So he just wants to use that as a boneyard.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good distinction to think about, as we're thinking about what we want to allow there. Maybe we're open to all kinds of different uses and things that wouldn't normally be allowed in these businesses, but they still need to be something that contributes to the corridor, that contributes to creates traffic for other businesses. Now, here's a question. Oh, go ahead.
Now, what he wants to do contributed no more to the area than the lay down yard that the railroad had right there on Delphine when they was putting the bridge in.
Right.
Right there. I mean, that's basically what you're going to end up with just on the other side of the bridge.
So lay down yard's a good example of a use you just allow in a place where, it's the lowest value land. It's wherever, you don't have any concerns. So we still are concerned with that, we still want to own a use to still generate some benefit to the other businesses there.
Yeah, because even with a fence, it still wouldn't look the best. I mean, the garden center, they sell stuff. They don't even have a privacy fence around their
Right.
place of business, but it's kept clean. They're selling stuff.
Right.
And that's
It's
a big difference.
business oriented.
Yeah, it's business oriented. It's
Or
just not a
customer
use store.
Mhm.
How do you write zoning code so it says we're going to approve it whether or not it contributes to the unique character of such a district without like leaving too much space? How do you do that without hanging yourself?
Yeah, you don't. That's the problem. Is we have to think every suggestion you'll come up with that we'd like this or that. I'm trying to think in terms of what other things in that category would we like or not like. One thing we could do is add a lot of conditional use permits. So Ms. Severs was talking about, well, it might be okay in this specific location, but it wouldn't be okay like if it was on the other side of the block. When you get into that level of detail, that's when you really want a conditional use permit so that you all would actually have to approve the conditions, et cetera. At the same time, I don't want to multiply those in the zoning ordinance because that just creates uncertainty for everybody. Everybody comes and says, what can I do there?
It changes with every planning commission too, who has a different vision.
Yeah. And everybody that owns a property comes and says, what am I allowed to do here? And I say, well, I don't know. Maybe it depends what the planning commission says, You tell me what you want to do.
Yeah, I think
they'll love that answer.
Yeah, I think the reasoning, it's a good expectation and acceptable to say, how are you contributing to the community there? And if they're not, I mean, and clearly he's not. And so I'm glad you pointed that out. So I would be in agreement that that's not a proper use, acceptable. He's not, contributing in any way to his neighbors or to that area.
No.
Luke, let's go back to your idea of a conditional use permit, though. With a conditional use permit, the adjacent property owners, and I guess generally the area, have an opportunity to come in and object or be favorable for that.
True, yeah. I mean, I don't want to be too down on CUPs. They exist for a reason. I mean, we could add a few uses in by conditional use permit that would allow for unique cases.
But that would,
and that's what we have.
Yeah. I think we need to figure a baseline zoning or a baseline basic city zoning that softens the restrictions, softens parking, and disallows junkyards.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, I think something, I don't know how you write it. That's what your job is. Something for that encourages investment and property maintenance and discourages sitting on our hands waiting for something else to come around.
Yeah, some place where they bring you something wacky. It's like, well, you can't do that here, but take a look over there. You can do that over there.
Yeah. Or something that, like I said, makes it a little bit softer, but because but
doesn't make it you can do anything.
Exactly.
Doesn't make it the bottom line.
Right. Well, and we have to have a baseline, and communities like that exist all over the world. There's got to be somebody who's doing that already. Let's just copy theirs.
That's probably what we'll do. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's got to be, I'd be willing to look around at other communities our size who have sections of towns like this and how they zone them successfully. I'm not sure we need to reinvent the wheel, but I think we can merge the two areas kind of gracefully.
Yeah. All right. Well, I really just needed some overall direction of for putting together something. So I'll revise the zoning proposal I had last time and try to show you something different that has maybe fewer uses than we were thinking, but still more than exists now. And
plan A minus or plan B plus.
Exactly. There we go. A flat, B sharp.
Okay.
Great.
And to touch back to the 408 property, do I have the impression there's getting ready to be an enforcement action?
There needs to either be a rezoning or an enforcement action. And so, yeah, we're gearing up for. Oh, did I lose y'all?
Nope, I'm here.
I'm still here.
Yeah. I said there'll be either a rezoning or an enforcement action. Yes, that's what's about to happen.
Bobby, where does City Council sit on 408?
We don't know anything about it right now. It hasn't come to.
They haven't seen it. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, you know what we want to do.
Yeah, well, and yeah, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I want to back on this board. Reading through it tonight is the first I saw of it. And
Okay, okay. I didn't know who
Presenting at our
sees
next
what
meeting.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Council's got other things on their mind. That's why you all exist. You tell them what to do.
Excellent, excellent. I like telling people what to do.
Give us the good recommendations.
There you go, recommendation.
Yeah.
Is there an open and healthy dialogue with the owner, or, I mean, like, is he still answering your calls? Does
Oh
he know
yeah,
the
yeah.
truth?
We can get a hold of it. He's calling us. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's aware it's coming. We basically just given him, he just lost his other property during the COVID thing. And so we kind of been giving him a little bit of an extension on this while he figures things out. And he really wants to just rezone it. And we've looked at it and been like, I mean, that might work with what we're talking about. So we thought maybe we'll extend it to see if Planning Commission wants to rezone it. But if not, I think we'll just start pressing them towards, you need to find another spot. So
Well, we're
that
talking
sounds-
about-
the direction it
Open
sounds like it's
store.
going. Mhm.
What we're talking about fits with the comprehensive plan, right?
I think so. I think we're
Okay.
talking about.
I think that's what I thought.
We might need to do a comp plan amendment for that area. Our comp plan is really vague for this area. And
Okay.
Jim, I talked to the land use map, at least. I talked to Jim Shaw about it, and he was quick to say that they really kind of punted on this one.
Okay,
Hard
Okay.
question. They had a lot to think about.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to run up against any big issues.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, you all have authority to propose amendments to the comp plan land use map too. We haven't done a real amendment to the land use map since 2008. So
Oh, we should do that. That'd be fun.
Well, on top of that, our comprehensive plan is starting to get a little old, and if I remember correctly, you're supposed to review it and update it every 5 years.
Mhm.
right. Well, the one that we worked on in the 2018 plan is still, I would say, brand new as plans
Oh, yeah.
go. But it was just it was a strategic plan, really. It wasn't like we didn't have a land use map. We're still operating the 2008 land use map.
Then it might be something to look at.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, I was going to say that. See, it didn't seem like it was. Seems like going through that comprehensive plan stuff was just yesterday. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
Yeah. The Charles Bukey stuff, that stuff is recent, but that was more of like a organizational strategy thing,
yeah.
less of a,
Hey, Luke, I guess, Stephen, you've been on the planning commission the longest, correct?
I think so, yes.
I remember back a number of years ago that the same issue that we're having at 408 came up at the old Marita Bridge store on South Delphine, right there at the interstate. The guy that bought the building was parking his trash trucks there. And I was just wondering how the city went about getting that relieved, because I know it was all in the papers and the guy made a big stink about it, but he eventually had to move his trucks from there.
You know, I don't remember that one specifically, but I can remember discussions about the zoning enforcement
Okay.
on some properties, and it may have been that property. And so we basically turn it over. No, we're not gonna, this violates the zoning, and we need to go ahead and act in some way to get them to change,
Okay.
which usually means sending the building inspectors over. And
Yeah.
Luke, do you need anything from the planning commission to let the guy know, like, sorry, you're having a hard time, but here in a month or two, we're going to have to do something. Something's going to have to change. Do you need that, or do you already have that?
Sorry, my I lost my sound for a second. My things need to recharge. What were you saying again, Larry? Sorry.
Do you need anything from the planning commission to go to this guy and say,
I
Hey,
just
you
needed
guys
some
appreciate it.
overall direction. I think I've got that.
yeah,
Yeah, so I need to know what direction, because I mean this we've been working on this for a while, so I'd like to bring you something that's that we can pass.
Do you think
I felt like what I brought last time in June, I brought the kind of new zone idea. Like that was a little bit too far. That wasn't quite what people were thinking. So
Well, I was
yeah,
talking about the 408 property. Like, do you need something from us to go?
Oh, no.
Let him know there's going to be an enforcement action if he doesn't change, or
No.
You already did.
We'll just take care of it as we normally do. But
Okay.
I just wanted to get a sense for, I don't want to tell the applicant to apply for rezoning and pay his money and stuff and then have everybody vote against it. So.
yeah, fair enough.
All right, are we to
So
the
we're
point
all,
of,
I'm sorry, Shannon.
oh, go ahead, Sarah, I'm sorry.
So we're in agreement that he's in violation of their zoning for that corner
Yeah,
there.
definitely in violation. Yeah, all I was trying to get a sense for was if you brought a rezoning, would it be approved? And it sounds like that's not really what we're looking for. So, yeah, we can take care of it.
Okay.
And we wouldn't really be making a determination if there was a violation. We're just simply saying, no, we
Right.
don't believe we'd rezone that property.
No.
Right. Yeah, we take care of violations. It just is sometimes we'll give people an extension if they got a situation and maybe there's going to be a rezoning. Like maybe we're in favor of this. It's not allowed technically right now, but we're going to rezone it anyway. So we'll kind of let it patch them through to the new zoning. So just trying to get a sense for whether that would happen. It doesn't sound like it. So.
No. Okay, are we to the other business and commissioners' correspondence and communication section of my agenda?
That's all I have.
Anybody else have anything else they need to say? Hope you all are feeling well and staying safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like to congratulate Bobby on his election to mayor.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Congratulations, Bobby.
And I think we're going to be doing our live meetings. We're going to try to do a live meeting, the first meeting in August 10th. So we might be back in the building then.
Oh, good. That'd be great.
Good,
That'd be
good.
great.
I wanted to follow up on something I told Luke today, and this is for Kara also. I thought the packet of information they put together on this rezoning was an excellent job.
Yeah.
It was really great.
Better than I've seen. I don't remember one better. Of course, Town of Bluefield wasn't quite
Good.
like this, and Pocahontas certainly wasn't, but excellent job,
It was
guys.
very professional work. It was great.
Yes.
It was great. Well, I just have to tell you,
Thank
I've had
y'all.
my 18-year-old nephew living with me for about 7 weeks. He just left this weekend, and he's, I don't know, training for something. And every night I've been going up on Skyline Drive and watching the sunset while he rides his bike. And I have to tell you, if you want some perspective of this whole COVID thing, go up on Skyline and watch the sunset. I'll take you. You can ride in my car because I have a pass now. So worthwhile.
Did you get a lifetime pass, Shannon, or just a yearly pass?
I'm not old enough for a lifetime pass.
Oh, okay.
I am.
I got it.
Oh, I didn't think there was an age for the lifetime pass.
I'm close, but I'm not quite there yet.
I think it's a senior pass, and it's cheap, and it's worth it.
Oh,
It is. Well, even the annual pass is worth it. But anyway, I guess we can adjourn then. Can somebody make a motion to adjourn?
I'll
Move to
make a
adjourn.
motion. Move
Second.
to adjourn.
Okay. Everybody in favor of adjourning? I don't know if I need a motion for that.
Aye.
Okay, so we can adjourn. I wasn't quite sure if I had to make a motion for that, but you can't ever make too many
It's not a
motions.
bad idea.
Can't ever make too many motions.
Good night.
Thank you all. Have a
All
good
right,
evening.
thank y'all.
All right.
Good
Thanks.
night.
Thanks, Luke.